This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by Allison Cook, Tim, and Super Inframan. Thank you so very much. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? I am here with Mr. Adam Sayne.
What's up, everybody?
And Chris Ernst.
Hello, everyone.
And we're going to do a listener stories show because we haven't done one in a while. I've had listeners on, but we haven't done an actual let's read some people's stories. And right off the bat, I want to say if you have a story you want to share with us, contact stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com. That is the best place to send them. I'm most likely to see them. You can just write out your story and we can discuss it on air like we're about to do. Or if you have a bunch of stuff going on, I can have you come on and talk about your experiences like I've done with a few people in the last few weeks. I am very bad about getting back to people, though. Because I read stuff and I go, oh, that sounds really interesting. And then I move on to the next message and I forget all about it. Because I don't have a memory.
Seriah is memoryless.
Do any of us at this point?
I literally don't know what day it is.
Flurbs Day.
Is it Thursday?
Flurbs Day.
Oh, Flurbs Day. It is Thursday, right?
I think it is Thursday, yeah.
Huh.
Just barely. It's barely hanging on to Thursday right now as we speak.
Oh, I've been running all of the programming for the weekend on WVBR remotely, and everyone will start sending me their stuff, and I'll be like, what is all this? Are we near the weekend? Oh, we are near the weekend. So, yeah, that's how things go at this point. Anyway, I wanted to do a couple updates and things I talked about in the past. The first one being the giant flies. Were either of you on the show with the giant flies, or is that... No, that was... Yep, I'm not going to remember names. But, so here's the fly story. When I was a kid, we used to walk through the woods in Willard, down by the lake, where the Potter's Field and stuff is, in the insane asylum. There would be these giant flies. These things were at least 2 inches long, sometimes a little bigger, sometimes a little smaller. They made a ton of noise, and they would just fly around us. Like, they'd just be like, zoom, zoom. And my friends would just be like, oh, they're just horse flies. And they said, don't get bit by them because they have these giant pincers to get through the horse flesh. Turns out that wasn't true. But anytime we saw one landed, you would see these giant pincers in the front of it. I mean, they look like they could just tear your skin up.
Uh-huh.
And so those were not something that we wanted to particularly encounter. So anytime one would be buzzing around us, we'd be like, oh, crap, Never got bit by one. None of my friends got bit by one. And I never thought too much about it, except I haven't seen them in, the last 20 years or so.
Okay.
And so I mentioned this on the show. We were talking about weird insects and stuff, and a number of people said, well, maybe they were cicadas and stuff. They're not. They look exactly like flies. And finally, someone figured out what it was, which is it's called a timber fly. It was exactly what I saw, and those pinchers they don't bite people or living organic stuff. They eat trees.
Ah.
So those pinchers go through the tree. However, they do not exist here. They are in like South America and stuff.
Oh, they're like tropical or something.
Yeah, so unless a few of them came up here and bred, I can't imagine they would have survived long. So I don't...
Well, I'm seeing something on here. It's called the Newfoundland timberfly.
Newfoundland timberfly?
Yeah.
Oh, up in Newfoundland. So that would be pretty far north.
But how big do they get?
Not sure. I just see the picture.
I can look.
It's like it's got like it's mostly black, but it has like yellow legs, yellow antennae, kind of like some yellow around the like what is that, the thorax?
Yeah, that's not it. No, definitely not.
Okay.
It was just the timber fly, just the straight up timber fly was exactly what we were seeing. It also explains why we never got bit by one, because they don't bite people.
Right. They're just solely vegetarian or herbivores, I guess you could say. Say.
It was saying that if enough of them are chomping on a tree, you can hear it from quite a distance away.
Huh.
Because they make a lot of noise. They make a lot of noise flying, too, heavy buzzes. So that mystery's sort of solved. I know what fly it was. I just don't know why it was here.
Uh-huh.
So there's still an added level of that's odd that they were this far north.
Yeah, so
Sure.
Wikipedia says the Book of Knowledge says that they resemble horseflies, but are distantly related.
Yeah, doing a quick Google search, I found a couple of things on Newfoundland timberflies too. But again, if they don't look
anything like that.
Yeah, they don't look the same.
The picture on Wikipedia, it looks completely different from the Newfoundland timberfly. It's more like it's more brownish in color.
So a few people wrote me, suggesting different things. I think only one person picked up the timber fly. I think that came from, just one person, and I was like, that's it. That's exactly what it was. But I have an email here from Matt. He just titled Horsefly Weirdness, and he suggests a few things like the Midas fly and there was something else in here he mentioned.
Yeah.
He said horseflies do max out at roughly an inch long, etc. Hummingbird moths. But like I said, I know now it was a timber fly. I just don't know why it was where it was. But he says, now on to my own weird story about horseflies. As you can probably guess, I'm a bit of a bug fan. When working as an entomologist, I took a small camping trip with my wife and friends to do some late-night trap collecting. This is where you set up a white sheet and both ultraviolet and mercury vapor bulbs to attract insects to you. On the first day, we hiked across the property, which stretched from a major canal to a major river, and saw very little wildlife. However, on the way back to the cabin, I started to notice the large black horseflies becoming more prevalent. I caught a few as specimens, but released them as I decided against collecting them. However, they started to land on my wife, and as I swatted them away, more and more began to land. By the time we made it back to the cabin, she had to have had 20 or 30 of these large flies on her, and as many flying around us. But they only landed on her. However, none of them were biting. I brushed them off her and turned on the light trap, and they soon forgot her and went over to the call of the UV light. The light trap attracted little else but the flies that night, and soon we turned it off and went inside. That night, as we were sleeping, I woke to a bright light shining through the window at the head of the bed. I looked through the curtains and saw a bright light about 20 to 30 feet off the ground. I assumed it was the motion sensor light on the stable across the yard and went back to sleep. This exact scenario played out 3 times that night, with my wife waking once to ask me about the light before going right back to sleep. In the morning, I went to find the light to see how to disable it, but there was no light anywhere in the area. The rest of the trip was uneventful, with the exception of the other nights getting more activity at the traps and no more anomalous horsefly activity. Years later, we were talking to a friend of my wife's family who was a police officer in the area. He said her dad had called that night and asked him just to swing by and make sure everything was okay at the cabin. But don't worry, he said, I didn't tell him about y'all guest. Guess y'all had a good party. When he passed by late at night around 3 a.m., there was a third car in the driveway, and there were lights on in the cabin. He drove on, wanting to give us privacy. We didn't have any guests over, only had 2 cars with us, and were asleep by midnight. Nothing was out of place in the cabin, and even our equipment that was blocking the door had still been there for me to move in the morning. If someone had been shining a light into our window, they would have had to have climbed onto the roof of the stable and hang off of it. The headlights of the car couldn't explain it either, as the driveway did not face our window, and it still doesn't explain why he saw lights on in the cabin. So yeah, that's a puzzler. And I will say, after I talked about these timber flies, my house got overrun by horse flies. And that has never happened before. I ended up having to get sticky traps, which I don't particularly like. And they filled up. They just kept filling up. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I've never seen this many flies before. So,
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
And then they just stopped. As suddenly as they started, they just stopped. And I have like a fly in the house, you know?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I don't know what that's all about. Maybe there's some weird connection with flies like there is owls.
It's Beelzebub, man.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies.
Yep.
And with this story, I mean, that's definitely odd. I don't know what really to make of it. I mean, because you got a light where there shouldn't be a light, and the flies, swarming to his wife beforehand.
Are the flies a harbinger of what's to come
I don't know.
later on with the light?
That would be my guess, that there was at least some weird energy in the area causing the flies to act weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I definitely wonder how much we really do it, affect our reality without realizing it. How much of this really is malleable, and there's obviously a consensus, but when things like that happen, I don't think the flies were paranormal. The flies in my kitchen weren't paranormal, but it was definitely weird that they were there. And maybe because I focused on those giant horse flies, some part of me manifested a bunch of horse flies.
Or you somehow drew the horse flies to you.
Right. I mean, it's hard to say because we really don't understand what reality is.
Well, you have so much weird energy things going on too, Seriah.
True.
True. It's very possible that maybe they're drawn to some kind of energy.
I mean, even if it's something that you're affecting the electromagnetic field, I mean, there definitely, I think, is a gradient that can be argued for, where things that are, we would call paranormal, also are affecting the, the electromagnetic field, which is something that's been documented. I think Dean Radin has probably documented that. I can't remember a specific example from the book, but something like that. Those animals are, engaged with the electromagnetic field in a way that we aren't. And if you are affecting that, then that might be throwing things off. I mean, it might be as simple as that, attracting or throwing something off so that they go someplace they're not supposed to, or congregating one place. Yeah.
I guess I could tell the EVP story real quick, because that counts for weirdness here. So a couple Saturdays ago, I went outside to get the mail at 2 a.m. because I'd forgotten to get the mail. And I did tell this story on the Patreon segment. The EVP is actually in the Patreon segment with Tim. I'm not going to put it in here, but I'll explain what happened. So I'd walk out.
That's Seriah's normal time to get the mail is 2 a.m.
It's not abnormal. But I go out and I get the mail and I look up and I can see the whole Milky Way because I live in the middle of nowhere. There's no light pollution. And I'm just like, wow. And I'm hearing all the insect noises and stuff, and they're really loud. And I'm like, and I take a walk a little bit down the road and I see a shooting star. I'm like, cool. Can I get a UFO? But no UFO. I never get the UFOs when I ask for it.
Just horse flies.
Yeah, just horse flies. So I started recording the insect noises because I am hoping to work on a fiction podcast. And part of that will be taking place outside. So if I end up actually doing it in the winter, I'm not going to be able to go outside and get insect noises, So I'm like, let me record some insect noises just so I have them. Plus, they're really cool sounding. And I walk to different parts of the yard because different parts of the yard would have completely different sounds. And I'm standing way in the back, and I don't notice anything weird. It's just dead quiet with tons of insects, complete pitch darkness. I walk around so that I'm going all the way back past the big barn, and all that's behind there are open fields. And as I come into visibility of those open fields, I can't see anything, but something screams. And it startles the hell out of me, and I stopped and I think that was a fox. And it was probably in the field, and I walked around the corner and it screamed as, a warning. And so I stopped the recording and I turned on the light and I'm looking and I'm like, all right, I don't see anything, but I want to make sure nothing's running at me trying to attack me or something.
Yes, that would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, because it's literally I can't see my hand in front of my face. So
Seriah gets attacked by a group of foxes in the middle of the night, getting the mail.
Right.
Paranormal podcaster, eaten by foxes.
And so I had mentioned the screen, like I realized I had the scream on the recording, and I said I should go back and listen to that and make sure it was a fox, and then I forgot about it, and I mentioned it on when we were recording the Metallic Onslaught, and one of the co-hosts said, "So you got the scream on tape?" I'm like, "It did. You should go find the scream." So that night or the next day, I remembered to go look for the scream, and I couldn't find it. Like it just wasn't there, and I'm like, "How is this scream not there?" It was loud. End result for that was that I was walking up the hill in the back when the scream happened. I must have tapped the microphone on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So like it condensed. So the scream is there. It's just very, very faint. But I'm going through those last few recordings with the volume way up. And when I'm standing in front of that barn, I get this EVP that's just whispering. Now, I've never in my life caught an EVP, and I wouldn't even have been looking for it if I had found the scream right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I can't tell what it's saying. I sent it to someone who did a lot of analysis on it, and she thinks it might be Italian. And the interesting synchronicity there is that this was, like I said, on a Saturday night, and the last exit was live. The actual show was airing on WVBR in the house. Now, I couldn't hear it out there, but one of the songs that would have been on, I can't say for sure which one it was, were both ritualistic songs in Italian.
What do you mean by that? Ritualistic songs? What do you mean? Like, what was it that you were playing?
It was either Karen Crisis's Gospel of the Witches, which all the songs have sort of a ritualistic feel to them, and she's literally reciting ritualistic stuff in the songs.
Okay.
Or it was The Magic Way, who are literally a band doing like chanting and magical type of incantations in their songs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
well, there you go.
That's a weird, because she didn't know that, and so she's like, I'm pretty sure it's Italian, and it's saying something like "listen." And I'm like, huh, interesting.
Do you think that the scream that you heard, like, you're sure that was an animal? I mean, you're pretty positive.
When I found the scream again, yeah, it sounds like a fox.
Okay, so do you think that that could have been that animal's reaction to whatever was around you?
No, I think it was its reaction to me walking back in the hill.
Okay.
I'm just saying the series of events, the way they played out, like the shooting star made me stay out there longer.
Yeah.
And then I got the EVP, and I would never have noticed the EVP because I never would have listened closely back to this if that scream hadn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had found the scream right off the bat, I wouldn't have looked at any of the other audio clips because it was exactly where I thought it was.
Right. Is there any way that you could go back and trace in terms of like a timestamp exactly what was playing at the time? Because if it is, I mean, if these are songs that are actually using ritual incantations, I'd be curious if there was a particular one that was happening at the time that the EVP said, listen.
I could probably do that to within a minute, I think.
Yeah.
I had not thought of that. That's a really good idea. Because there should be a timestamp on the phone recording.
Right.
And all I'd have to do is then match it up to, like, the last exit starts at 11:30 p.m. How far is that song? What time was it if I move forward that way? I'll have to check that out. That's a good idea, Chris. Yeah. Regardless,
it'll turn out to be some spell to like conjure foxes.
Yes.
That would be awesome.
To attract foxes to your general vicinity.
That would seriously be awesome. I would love that. And I've heard fox screams before because we had a foxhole out in the shed, and we had some baby foxes under what I refer to as the scary barn.
Uh-huh. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre barn.
So as soon as it looks more like the Amityville house, I think.
Okay.
But I remember walking out in the same type of thing where I walked out toward the shed one night, but it was I could see, and a fox darted out and screamed, and I went, "Why are you trying to draw my attention?" You know, and then I went into the shed, and I'm like, "There's a foxhole over there. That's why you're trying to draw my attention."
Mm-hmm. Fox had babies, huh?
Yeah, probably. So I just kind of stayed far away from the foxhole because I didn't want it to think I was attacking, a threat or anything.
Mm.
Okay, so moving on to another story here. This one is in response to Tim being on last week and talking about the women in white phenomena.
Okay.
And it comes from Anne. The following woman in white story is above all related to sleep paralysis, a quite interesting phenomena which led to several events where I was completely exposed to the woman in white. When I was younger, I couldn't sleep on my back because and she wanted to note her English is not perfect, so I'm reading this as she wrote it. I couldn't sleep on my back because I always ended up with sleep paralysis. To be clear, there are obviously different types of sleep paralysis. My pattern was that I couldn't move anything and also my eyes were closed. So I never saw anything and I almost never heard anything. If I heard anything, then I heard beloved people from far away. They weren't even at my place, but I could hear them talking and laughing. I always wanted to get up, and when I got up, nobody was at home. Normally, I was locked in my body for hours, unable to move anything. It always took me a lot of time to move my small toe and then the rest of my body, so that's why I never slept on my back, and that is very understandable. Wow. In 2006, I studied abroad in Andalusia in southern Spain.
Andalusia.
Andalusia,
Yeah.
okay. Mm-hmm. I moved to a shared flat, and since day one, I had a repetitive dream. I was lying in my bed, and a woman, dressed in white with long blonde hair, stood in front of my bed and yelled at me something to the effect of, mi hijo. Donde está mi hijo? My son, where is my son? Mm-hmm. I probably massacred that because I don't speak Spanish. I always felt exhausted after these dreams, and my ears were red and swollen. I got used to it. My sleep paralysis got worse, and the nightmare with this woman was my daily companion. One day, my roommate asked me what's up, and I told her I couldn't get enough sleep because this woman in white keeps yelling at me in my dreams. My roommate asked for a detailed description, and when she revealed she saw the woman in white together with her boyfriend in front of the bed. She woke up, and in front of her bed stood this woman. My roommate woke her boyfriend up and asked him if he sees the same. He affirmed, and both were so scared that they hid under the blanket and after a while peeked, and the woman in white was gone. Not only was she and her boyfriend, the lady was also appearing to the neighbors as well, or it was known to the neighbors. Some saw her wandering around the house. Once my neighbor was taking a shower and he was joking around with his girlfriend. She was teasing him from behind the shower curtain, trying to touch him. He stated that she was still touching him, and when he moved the shower curtain away, he found himself alone in the bathroom. His girlfriend already left to prepare dinner.
Nice. Okay.
My dreams kept getting worse.
I do have to sleep tonight sometimes, Seriah. You know that, right?
Well, maybe you'll see a woman in white.
No, that's okay.
A child in white, then. With black eyes.
That's
even worse.
Thank you, Chris. I'm glad someone agrees with me on that.
My dreams kept getting worse and worse with her. She yelled directly in my ears, and she was angry. And I wasn't able to move or scream or to open my eyes to see her fully. My eyes always rolled away, and I just saw her white dress and long hair. I wanted to see her face, but I couldn't. I lived in Andalusia. Is that what you said it was?
Yeah.
And blonde hair like this is very, very rare. This one day, she made me more angry than ever. I wasn't capable of her tyranny anymore, and I wanted her to go away, but I couldn't move. And my eyes always rolled away. It was exhausting. She was so close to my face, she nearly touched me. At this moment, I was extradited to her. I wished I were in the living room. Suddenly, I was in the living room, and her screams didn't hurt my ears anymore. That was good. but the lady engaged to scream at me over and over the same phrase. She came out of my room. I immediately wished to be in the front of the house, and then I found myself floating in front of our roof terrace at the 5th floor. In this moment, I realized that I could be anywhere. The lady noticed my absence and came out. I thought I would like to see the earth from above and was rushed up into space. I saw the earth from above, and that was incredible for me. Incredibly scary, because I asked myself what happens with my body and that crazy lady. I got sucked back in my body, and I got up with a big scare. My ear was swollen and red, and I was totally fuddled. This was the last time I saw the woman in white. I always tried to maintain myself against her, but somehow I was too weak, or rather had to use my mental strength. The dream stopped immediately when I moved out. I still had to struggle with sleep paralysis in years after. I still have some episodes, but the woman in white was the most intense experience I had during sleep paralysis. And what that suggests to me is like the fact that she can experience sleep paralysis like that maybe opened her more to the experience of this woman, which might be something trapped there or something repeating there in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. There's a lot of trauma, I would imagine, in terms of like, death trauma in Spain from, the White Terror, from the Franco-Spanish Civil War. So I wouldn't be surprised, if you believe in the idea of their, violent death or, some sort of trauma that exists yielding some sort of spirit. I feel like that's a story that we have heard before. But the whole zooming out to space thing, that's wild. I think your take on it and that opens something up. Maybe it opens something up even more.
Yeah. Well, I think her wanting to get away from that lady in white pushed her into that out-of-body state.
Yeah.
She was probably capable of all along, but had never tried. She was just more trying to get control of her body again.
Yep.
Well, what's interesting about that story is that she's having this sleep paralysis experience, right? And that's where she sees this lady in white. And then, but her friends seem to see this as an apparition in the waking world.
Right.
Mm.
So I find that interesting too. Like, what's the difference there? Why does one see one way and the other see one the other? That's interesting. I've never really. Usually, when you hear these stories, it's usually like, well, there's an apparition in the house, and that's what we see.
Right.
So, is there perhaps like a deeper connection between this person that wrote this story and someone else and this lady in white? You know?
Yeah.
And I kind of like what you're saying there, Chris, is more like, is this an actual person that died in that house, or is this more like some kind of archetypal image, almost like a tulpa, maybe that has been made
right
through the years, possibly in this area. It kind of sounds a little bit like La Llorona.
That's what I was thinking too, except instead of the weeping, it's like yelling and screaming at you.
Well,
right. Well, there's the whole thing about La Llorona and the children, that's part of the legend too. So,
yeah,
you could probably say that there might be, since Mexico was colonized by Spain, maybe there's a link somewhere culturally in that respect. Mm-hmm. And maybe this is some kind of archetype figure that is in an area. What I would love to know in these stories is, I'm sure she's there. She's living there, probably like on some kind of extended vacation, or maybe going to school or something like that. But like, I'd love to know whether or not anybody investigates this stuff, whether they say like, well, who lived in this house? Who was there?
Probably
does
not.
it fit with previous owners? Does it fit with a tragedy that occurred there? I don't hear that a lot on some of these stories. I'd love to hear that more.
Well, I think a lot of people are not looking to investigate. They just want it to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I would just be curious. I would just, I would think you'd want some validation to what you're experiencing.
Yeah. Well, from the sounds of it, it was extremely unpleasant. So I would think all she wanted is for her to leave her alone.
Absolutely.
And you point out that other people saw her correctly, but her experience was actually painful. It was affecting her ears in a very physical way.
Right.
Yeah.
So that altered state of sleep paralysis may have put her more in line with that, or maybe it was psychosomatic where she, her body was reacting as if it was being yelled at in a painful way.
Sure.
Now, something I'm curious about too is whether or not, did this start when she came there? Was there some kind of connection possibly between her and this entity?
Well, it started for her, but it seems like other people had seen it before.
Okay. Or whether, but did was there a possibility that the haunting or whatever increased because these people were there? I don't know.
Maybe.
I think it just kind of takes two to tango.
Right. So if if this individual was psychically sensitive or something like that, then that allowed there to be some sort of greater contact. That's kind of what you're saying, Adam?
Yeah. Sets it off. It off, basically.
Sure.
So, because I would think that these things would need us to exist. There has to be an interaction somehow.
Yeah, I think you're right. Even if it's just replaying something, I think we're the thing hitting play.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because the environment has to have something to play too. What's it going to do? Just does it walk around and say, "Where's my son? Where's my son?" when no one's there? I doubt it. I think that there's got to be some kind of interaction between us and the environment, or interaction between us and the spirit or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. All right. This next one is entitled Entity on the Road. It comes from Nick. And he writes, "My name is Nick, and I'm from Central Oregon. I had a series of experiences that lasted for about 3 months, all involving the same entity. This always occurred after sundown, and only while I was driving by myself. These events would occur a few days every week and last for about 10 to 15 minutes. The first instance I can recall happened on a back road between my hometown and the nearest town about 14 miles away. I'm just driving along, listening to my music, and I see this figure on the side of the road in the wash from my headlights, maybe 100 feet away. It looked like a person, about 6 feet tall, but its skin and shoulder-length hair were pure bright white. I noticed it was also wearing pants and a frilled shirt the same bright white as its skin and hair. The only color this being had on it was a bright, vibrant red vest. It stood on the shoulder of the road, ramrod straight, shoulders back. That's when I noticed that it was looking directly at me, as if it could see past my headlights through the windshield into the dark interior of the car and see me. As I got closer, I could begin to make out facial features: a thin, angular nose, a very pointed chin, high, prominent cheekbones, lips so pale they blended in with its unnaturally white skin. My first thought was, this guy looks like a vampire straight out of a movie. I noticed that as I got closer to it, that its head turned to follow my progress, constantly staring at me, a slight smirk on its lips. I kept eye contact with this thing, unable to make sense of what I was seeing, until I pulled even with where it was standing. As my view of it passed from the windshield to the passenger side window, it was gone. Simply vanished, didn't run away or duck down, just gone. Okay, that was weird, I thought, but not having anything I could do about it, and no ideas what it could have been, I just kept driving. About 5 minutes later, I see him again. Same posture, same outfit, standing on the side of the road about 100 feet away, staring at me. Same thing happened again, with it disappearing when I got too close. This happened every couple of minutes on that drive until I got about a mile from my house. This only happened when I was driving alone at night. Every couple of days I would see this thing, just watching me as I drove closer and then disappear when I got too close. It didn't matter what road I was driving down either. Back roads, residential streets, downtown, the highway, everywhere. If I wanted to show up, it was going to show up, always smirking and watching. After about 3 months of this, seeing it on dozens of nights, it just stopped happening. The whole series of sightings began very suddenly and ended just as abruptly, and to this day I have no idea what it was, what it meant, or what, if anything, it wanted.
Well, I'm glad that it was wearing pants. That's good.
My first thing, if he had told, like, if I was talking to Nick here when this was happening, I'd say get a camera for your car.
Yeah, right.
I don't know when this happened, so I don't know. Maybe that wasn't a thing at the time. He doesn't have a date.
I mean, besides a vampire, it reminded me of two things when you first described it. One, Faye, like classic sort of gentry she, that sort of the flouncy shirt and the vest and all white. Also a little space brothery, if you think about it, like a little, like really early contactee. I mean, the red vest is something else. The red vest actually sounds like a very Faye she thing to me. Reminds me of the red cap. I feel like there's got to be some significance to the red vest too, in terms of like Fae folklore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point.
And the fact that it kept showing up to him, and it didn't it sounds like the type of thing someone might make up, except for the fact that there's no big payoff to it. Like it's so weird. If you were going to make something up, you're not going to make this up.
Yeah. Well, here's a one. Yeah. According to Yates, some like leprechauns and fairies wear a red vest. So yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's a thing.
Yeah. I'd like to know if it was a more liminal part of his life, if he was going through a lot of changes there or a lot of stress.
Where did he say that? Does he say where this is?
Yeah, he said Central Oregon.
Central Oregon.
Oregon.
Okay.
So that's a prime area for weirdness anyway, Oregon.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Isn't there? I mean, I know there's the Tim has talked about the connection of the women in white with Bigfoot, but I wonder if there's like a man in white connection to Bigfoot at some point too. Huh. I'm thinking of Oregon because Oregon is such a huge Bigfoot haven.
Right. And anything in white may just be morphing to some degree anyway.
Sure.
Interesting. I realized there was another fly story here that I forgot to read.
And why so many fly stories?
Because I asked if anyone had any weird experiences with flies when Alex and I were talking about this.
Nice.
So, and a few people, like I said, just wrote to suggest what it might have been, but a couple people sent me weird stories about flies. And this is from Taylor. And they said, I listened to your interview with Alex. I have experienced large flies once before. These were between 1 inch and 1.5 inch. I couldn't say there were any specifically 2 inches or longer, but these flies were enormous. It was the summer of 2016. I had returned to the Twin Cities from college and was spending some time with some friends at what I would call a punk house. It was called the Paper House. It's gone now, but those were some good memories. One day I showed up to hang out and there were flies everywhere. I asked why, and the best guess I got was that somebody probably left some meat in the garbage or something. The thing is, we're talking about hundreds or thousands of giant flies, at least 1 inch long, that showed up in the course of one day. They filled every room, and they were totally gone within 2 days later. Or totally gone 2 days later. Maybe that's just how the fly life cycles work. I don't know that this was anything paranormal, but it was within a month of an attempted goetic summoning of the spirit Gremory, using the Crowley Mathers Goetia, but improvising the incest, libations, and circle. Yeah, probably should not have improvised the circle. It was myself and 2 non-spiritual materialist friends, and all 3 of us channeled questions and answers to each other. I don't know. It was weird as hell, and I always thought those flies were not normal. Been around large amounts of flies before and since. Just last weekend, we camped in an old cow pasture. I shouldn't need to say more.
Well, Gamori is, if I remember correctly, Gamori is a female demon that rides a camel. I wish somebody like Bren were here to correct me on that. I'll search it as I'm thinking about this. I don't think there's a fly thing that goes on with Gamori, but I mean, if you're summoning demons from a grimoire, you might end up with flies.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, I guess so.
I think that's a quote there, Chris.
Right there. You can put that on my that's the name of my autobiography.
Yeah. If you're summoning demons, you might end up with flies.
There you go.
Christopher Ernst.
Yep.
I'd read that.
Okay, here I'm looking at this. So Gamori, yes, is okay. It's sort of appearing as a beautiful woman, but like gender fluid, using masculine pronouns, wearing Duchess's crown, riding a camel. Yeah, no flies, but.
What do you look at that up in?
I have a like a list of it's like a PDF that I have. It's a list of all the goetic demons.
Oh, okay. Okay. I got you.
Yeah, this is all like stuff. A Gamori in particular, where I'm familiar with, is from the Goetia of Dr. Rudd, which is one of Stephen Skinner. If anybody knows Stephen Skinner, he's the big Australian ceremonial magician. And they talked about, and it goes back to Lesser Key of Solomon.
Okay. All right. So the next one here is a very short one from Jason. He called it the Strange Time Reversal. Said, I was driving home on the interstate a few months back. It was night, though I'm not sure it makes a difference at this point. I've driven this stretch of road my entire life. On a normal day, a driver would pass exit A and then exit B, and then the highway would continue up a steep hill. This night, though, I passed both exits, and as I prepared to go up the hill, which, gaining a bit of speed helps, I suddenly found myself at exit A again, traveling in the same direction. It was as if someone had pressed the skip backward button on a DVD player, only I distinctly remember previously passing both exits. The rest of the night went on without any kind of further incident.
Oh, that's a glitch in the Matrix, man.
Yeah.
Somebody did hit rewind on reality. That's what happened, and this guy noticed it. That's crazy. I love stuff like that.
So do I. Definitely.
Yeah.
That's a crazy story.
I've had things happen where I am positive I made 2 right turns and I should have had to make 3 for where I ended up, and I'm like, I must have gotten that wrong. Like I must have just zoned out or something, because I shouldn't be where I am.
I feel like it's that trope too of like it's a kind of a Stephen King thing, or no, I'm thinking specifically of John Carpenter's Mouth of Madness, when they go to the sort of cursed town, and you try to keep driving away or from it, but you keep on passing the same. Was it Hobbs End was the name of it?
Yes,
great movie, by the way.
I love that movie. It's one of my all-time favorites.
One of the best pieces of trivia from that is that Sam Neill played the entire thing as if he was playing a comedy. That was his acting method for it.
Huh.
As if, yeah.
Nice.
I mean, it works.
It does. No, it's great.
Totally works.
I mean, because that's a Lovecraftian movie that's not based on Lovecraft's works.
Right. It's like this weird mashup of Lovecraft and sort of Stephen King. Yeah.
All right. So this next one is from Teresa. She says, I'm writing to share an experience or set of paranormal experiences from my early childhood. Lately, it seems like you and your guests have touched upon the correlation between paranormal experiences, poltergeist activity, and childhood trauma. So I am offering my story for your consideration. My experiences took place in an old New England house built in the 1800s in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. We were a large Irish Catholic family, and I was the youngest of 6, 5 girls and 1 boy. My father bought the large Victorian fixer-upper because it was large enough to accommodate all of us, and because he got an amazing deal on it. We moved in when I was 6 months old and stayed till I was 6 years old. After we moved in, 3 of the older girls discovered the house was full of secret passages, which is really awesome. The story that we were told is that the house had originally been built and owned by a newspaper publisher who was also an abolitionist, and he allowed his house to serve as a safe haven for escaped slaves on the Underground Railroad. One of these passages led from the back of the coat closet in the front hallway up to the rear of my bedroom closet on the high second floor. Another highlight of the house was a large, scary basement with an old coal bin. The yard surrounding the house was large and contained some huge old trees that I would climb and hide myself in all the time. The trees had a very protective energy. My memories of the house are disjointed and weirdly compartmentalized. I remember feeling terrified of things I can't quite put my finger on, and at the same time I felt that something was watching over and protecting me. My family has a history of alcoholism on both sides. Both my mother and father had abuse histories of their own, and were not prepared to meet the needs of so many children. But being a devout Catholic, my father originally wanted 12 children. Instead, they stopped at 7 after one child, a daughter, died a few months after being born. I remember it being a Lord of the Flies atmosphere. Of course, flies. This whole show's about flies.
Yeah. I'm detecting a common theme tonight. If I see gigantic horse flies in my room tonight, I'm calling you tonight, Seriah.
And that gave rise to weird games, bullying, and other cruel behavior. And as the youngest, I made an easy target. One of the older girls began sexually abusing me when I was 4 or 5, and she was in middle school. So I remember feeling terrified a lot at the time. To make sure I wouldn't tell anyone about the abuse, my older sister would threaten me with monster stories. She would also climb up the passage that led to my bedroom closet and make noises at night to scare me. Early on, I adopted a strategy of hiding and could squeeze myself into the tiniest of places, on shelves, in closets, inside cabinets, and up in trees. I remember having the idea that there was also someone with me telling me where to go. It felt like a protective presence that I couldn't see, but I felt. At night in my bed, I would scooch over to make room for what I thought was my guardian angel. Whenever I was found in a cabinet or wherever I was hiding, I remember the footsteps stopping, a feeling of dread, and something inside me would shut off, so I can't recall the specific details of the abuse that would be described to me later. When I try to recall, I am overwhelmed by a feeling of such intense fear that I can't go any further. Oddly, though, I do have a very clear memory of being led by the hand somewhere on multiple occasions up a narrow, bare wood staircase. At the top landing, I would be given the choice of entering one of 2 doors angled next to each other. Each door opened up into a perfectly round room, one of them painted rose red and the other a soft powder blue. Each room was identically furnished with a large circular bed, a circular nightstand. Sitting on the nightstand was an oval red or blue princess phone that was popular at the time in the early 60s, and there were no other furnishings, doors, windows, or closets. I had the sense that I was being given a protected, safe place to take a nap where no one would find me. The rooms also felt luxurious to me, like I was a princess. I suppose this could be considered a paranormal experience or the byproduct of a psychological process where a traumatic memory that cannot be logically integrated into a child's mind is replaced by a more acceptable or desirable alternative. At the same time, I had a definitive feeling of someone being with me. I also wonder if my intense fear and what I later understood to be rage actually created an evil little 3-foot-tall witch with a crooked, pointy hat who sometimes appeared at my bedroom door and completely terrified me. I know sometimes on the show you have discussed tulpas. I think we discussed tulpas tonight.
Yeah.
In the counseling that I've had over the years, I've discovered that a unique feature of my early childhood sexual abuse is the amount of rage it produces. Where does it go? One day I remember my mom sending me to my room. I was angry. I stood at my open window pressing my hands and forehead against the screen so hard that at some point it broke. I flew out, tumbling down the portico and falling 2 stories to the ground. I have a clear memory of looking at the tall oak tree in the front yard as I fell and seeing what I thought was an angel. I hit the ground face down flat and could feel that there was nothing wrong with me. I had the idea that the angel told me it wasn't time for me to go, or that I couldn't go yet. As I became adolescent, my experiences mostly revolved around night terrors, always revolving around that house and minor poltergeist-ish activity. I seem to attract or project paranormal activity. Again, I think there's a connection between the intense emotions, especially fear, of a child and what we call paranormal activity. Maybe it's the process of a child dissociating or leaving themselves when confronted with something beyond their comprehension. But in my case, I also genuinely feel there was something protecting me to the extent that it was able. In my adult life, I've had a handful of experiences where I should have been killed or at least injured, but walked away without a scratch. Same feeling of being protected.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a
lot there. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the role that abuse plays in some of these encounters.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, you talked about that several times, like especially with like alien contact, alien abduction stuff. Some people have like a history of abuse there.
Yep, and near-death experiences. People who have near-death experiences are more likely to have abuse in their past.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
near-death experiences too.
Yeah. And it's also pretty well proven at this point now that the U.S. government was experimenting on children, abusing them in order to, and I'm not talking about my lab stuff, I'm talking about, Artichoke and MK Ultra and the stuff that was going on even behind that. I feel like Whitley Strieber has talked about his family being involved in that when he was a kid. Say what you want about Whitley Strieber, but I think if he says that happened to him, I believe that's what he experienced. But that's the idea of the trauma sort of somehow ripping, like allowing, if it's done young enough, allowing these greater psychic powers is certainly something that I feel like we can kind of just take as a given now. The thing that I was thinking about when it comes to, this, my family grew up, my mom's side of the family grew up in a similar area, and I know houses like this. Actually, my family had one for a while in Massachusetts. My mom's side of the family, they lost all their money, but at one point they were sort of rich New Englanders, as it sounds like the guy who built this house was. And we had not only in my grandmother's house and in my aunt and uncle's house, there was in Massachusetts, there right near Woonsocket, Rhode Island, there were all of these different, rooms that were used during the Underground Railroad as, sort of safe havens. And those were some really, we as kids used to go and play in there. And there are definitely, I remember feeling the weight of these places, and I would not be surprised, if this individual felt like there was somebody helping or protecting her there. There could be that there was something left over from all of the different slaves that were sort of going through there. Some may be dying, some maybe not, but I've experienced myself the sort of weirdness of these types of houses and the spaces there, and I completely believe that there could have been something left over.
Yeah. And it could also be the people that owned the house in the time of the Underground Railroad. I mean, for someone to have done that at that time, they had to have been a pretty benevolent and charitable person.
Yeah.
So you would think there would be at least, there's that history there, and there's the weight of that history. And then there's also some pretty bad stuff that happened, but there were some pretty good people that, were involved with all that. And you could imagine that that's probably lingers over too. Absolutely. It's almost like there's good and bad in that environment. Well, it's good and bad everywhere, but
right.
There's good and bad in that environment, and it's kind of conflicting, and it would want to protect a child.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree.
The other thing, her asking where all that anger goes, that's just it. I mean, I think with some people who have the potential for more psychic abilities, that anger generates this poltergeist activity. Doesn't happen for everyone, because that's not how it channels with everyone. Some people just end up with really severe personality disorders, or they just end up miserable people.
Yeah.
It can channel all different ways, but it has to go somewhere. and usually break stuff as it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where you get the scary experiences. It's not that the thing is negative; it's that it's built on negative energy.
Sure.
Do you think some of the way that, as you were talking about that, Chris, I had this thought about those houses. Like I've heard some people talk about some of those houses and how like they really weren't designed. They weren't modernly designed. Like They weren't like you had to like to get to the bathroom or something. You got to walk through somebody's bedroom. Weird stuff like that.
Yeah.
So do you think that there's like almost like a disorientating effect when you're into one of those large houses that can like amplify that? It's almost like the house itself is like a receiver, like it amplifies your emotions and the way that you feel because you're so disoriented by this environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's, kind of like a Eleusinian Mysteries type thing. You're getting, or like the pyramid, the maze of the pyramid, somehow getting you to a different state. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, I'm thinking in particular of my aunt and uncle's house that was, you consider it a mansion. I consider it a mansion now, but it was this big sort of like, if you look down on it from the top, it was this big C-shaped white, 3-story house. And there were all these back, like, there must have been servants' entrances from when it was built. And different staircases and stuff like that. But yeah, you would have to go through, like, I remember one room in particular, you'd have to go through like a bathroom to get to a bedroom. And then there was also this weird little hidden staircase in the back. And I remember every time going there when I was a kid, I kind of thrilled in the disorientation of it, but it was completely like being in a weird haunted house of some sort.
Yeah. Yeah. You would get that kind of fun house effect. And I guess like what you're saying is essentially like you are kind of disorientation. You're probably getting into like that feeling of an altered state at a certain point too. So then, the chicken and egg thing with altered states, is supernatural experiences caused by that, or does it use that as a way to manifest? Right?
Yeah.
So
I will point out, too, that although it's not in the Bridgewater Triangle, it is close. That area.
Okay, so that's Western Massachusetts then, right?
It's like Woonsocket, Rhode Island is like at the really tip-top corner of Rhode Island right after you pass from Massachusetts into it. So, yeah, if you go from like the western edge of near Somerset, where the western edge of the Bridgewater Triangle is, and Rehoboth, you drive right into Woonsocket.
All right. Well, let's deal with another haunted story here. This is called The Paranormal Penny, and this is sent to us from Tammy. She says, when I was a small child of about 4 years old, my mother would send me to the bedroom for a nap. She would often nap at this time too, so I was alone. I remember being visited by some entities that would speak to me. They mostly asked me to follow them. The entities resemble the type of spots you see after you look at a bright light, so retina burn, basically. I tried to touch them, but they had no mass. Once, the entities convinced me to go to the kitchen and pour cereal on the counter. We moved from that home when I was 5 years old, and the entities never made another appearance for me again. The home we moved into was possibly haunted. The weekend that we moved in, we had a barbecue in the backyard with many friends and family. One of my mom's friends noticed someone looking out a second-floor window. My stepdad ran in the back door while his friends were around to the front to try and catch this person, but they never found anyone. It was as if the person vanished. As time went on, and a lot of odd things happened. As time went on, a lot of odd things happened, period. Once, a glass table centerpiece shattered while my family was eating dinner. My mother's religious symbol, such as a tacky bust of Jesus, was found knocked off a shelf and broken. This would have happened when no one was home. She glued the bust, but once again it was found destroyed. Mom's tacky foil picture of Jesus would not stay on the wall. Many times it was found on the floor. Either the nail had come out of the wall or the wire on the frame broke, and finally the glass was shattered and it had to be discarded. Mom's crosses also would not stay on the walls. A priest came and did a house blessing, which helped settle things down a little bit. Another strange memory from my childhood is watching a man rat-type entity climbed down the attic ladder some nights. The thing looked like a man and rat hybrid, even though it had a tail and rat feet. It never attempted to bother me or my family, but I remember it vividly.
It's just like, don't mind me. I'm just a rat man climbing up your wall.
No, down from from the attic ladder. So,
Oh, well, that makes it better. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Just imagine being a discarded entity. Okay. And you probably have the whole information of the universe, but your whole goal, because you're so bored that evening, is to get a 5-year-old kid to pour cereal on the counter.
Well, it's interesting that she had that experience in one house and she didn't have it when she left.
Yeah.
It makes me my sense of this would be to say that she's sensitive to things, and these
Sure.
are the interpretations that the child is putting onto it, because we can't necessarily see these things for what they are, but she is because the energy is different where she is in different places, she's picking up different things.
Right. And you could have the kind of case like we've talked about many times, the co-creation stuff, where these beings are showing them what they think that they want to see.
Right.
Although they're just like, oh, I'm interacting with this human. What does it want to see? I know, a half man, half rat climbing up the ladder. Makes perfect sense.
I feel like that's there was like a rat man like that in Lovecraft's Dreams in the Witch House or something. That's what made me think of. But I was kind of chuckling during the talking about all of the crosses and the Jesus, because it really sounds like that house or something in that house is like nope, no Jesus here.
Exactly.
It's very stereotypical demon, like everything is demon type of behavior.
Yeah. And who knows what that can come from? Because I don't think there are entities out there that are specifically anti-Christian.
No. That's why I was sort of chuckling at it. I mean, I think that it's more like the power of belief. That's where the power is there. And I mean, some people might argue there is some sort of mystical spiritual lineage that exists through Christian mysticism, and just not my thing, so I don't know much about it. But yeah, I mean, there's I wouldn't be surprised if all of those sound to me like poltergeist type activity, that's being caused by the people that are in that space and what their emotions are creating.
And when we talk about stuff like that, I bring this up a lot, but the Bible that in the Seattle Demon House, I can't remember his name now, but anyway, they open their bedroom door and there's a Bible that's singed, that apported in front of their bedroom door. And so, of course, they took that as being demonic because it burned a Bible. When Steve Mera tried to replicate that type of Bible being singed, he couldn't do it because the thing is so flammable that the minute you touch a lighter to one of those pages, they're just gone. So he actually couldn't replicate the singed Bible. And what that makes me think of is apports are usually very warm when they first appear. So whatever process causes the apport might have been enough just to singe those pages because they're so fragile. So what may have been here's a Bible became here's a burning Bible, which then made them think, oh, this is a demon, and thus the energy then followed in that direction, because it was after that I think some of the more demonic sounding stuff started happening. So again, is that the thing was that the first sign of demonic activity, or was that misunderstood activity that then processed into demonic activity because that's what was expected? Keith something.
Keith Linder.
Linder, that's it. I wanted to say Limner, and I knew that was wrong. Keith Linder. So I mean, that's one of those weird things. What's first?
All right.
Right. And again, it goes back to, are we creating these things ourselves?
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
Okay. So this next one was about Kundalini, and it comes from Sherry. And there's a handful of people on YouTube that every time I mention Kundalini, they get really upset. I'm not really sure why. But I think they feel like I associate everything with Kundalini, but Kundalini is really just a word to describe energy that comes from us that we don't understand.
Yes.
Like if you're looking at other cultures, they have different names for it, like chi or ki energy.
Yeah.
It could even
what are people getting angry at?
I think they're just tired. I think they're just tired of hearing about it. I think they're just tired of hearing about it in some cases.
Oh.
It is YouTube after all.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. Never read the comments.
I always read the comments.
Right.
Because there are some good comments on our YouTube, and that's the most of them. But every once in a while, I'll be like, "Oh, great, another Kundalini experience," and it's like, "I'm sorry, if I notice the pattern, I'm not going to not say it." And I also want to say, people think that I'm talking that anyone who has this type of experience is having a Kundalini awakening, but the awakening is something that happens when the Kundalini energy moves freely through your system. Having Kundalini energy awake a little bit, or whatever this energy is not abnormal, but it's also not a full Kundalini awakening.
I also think that there's a lot of, like, in the same way that, there's a lot of crossover into New Age that I think rubs people the wrong way. I think the same thing is true about Kundalini and yoga in general. I mean, I was raised before yoga was popular, so I think of it in a very, very different way than everybody else does. But I think that, like yoga and Kundalini are so, for a lot of people, it makes them think of Lululemon and, some rich white lady doing yoga and then getting a smoothie or something. Yeah.
But it's just the word I use to describe this, whatever this energy is we have inside of us.
I think it's a word that's been used for thousands of years. It's okay to use, I think, because I think it accurately describes one way of looking at it.
So this one says, I started listening to your show about 3 years ago on YouTube. I've never come across in all my years of searching some of the phenomena that's been discussed on your show, but has happened in my life. And I get this a lot, especially when dealing with the Kundalini stuff, because no one really talks about it, because I don't think a lot of people understand what it is.
Sure.
It's a breath of fresh air. Take Kundalini, for instance. I think that's the word you use. It has to do with electrical forces. And that is definitely part of it. There's something electrical to it. Absolutely. I've had a lot of events in my life related to this: radio interference, street lights going out, extreme static electricity coming off of me. And you'll probably get a laugh out of this one, but in my 20s, I would occasionally get an overpowering orgasmic feeling running through my body that would build and build. I distinctly remember this happening a number of times, especially while driving my car, and and no, I wasn't on drugs or drinking. I've never heard this addressed on your show or anywhere else. Have you? To this day, I still get that strange feeling, though not nearly as intense, that runs up my spine when something I see or hear sets it off. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I do smoke cigarettes, but I've been very healthy. I'm not, nor have I ever been on prescription meds, except occasionally an antibiotic here or there in my lifetime. Is this Kundalini? Might this force have something to do with the story that we're going to relate in a moment? So first of all, yes, whatever she's experiencing sounds like Kundalini.
Absolutely.
Kundalini is very tied to sexual energy.
Yep.
And that it's also considered to be the evolutionary force in man, for whatever that's worth.
It is the snake that sits at the bottom of your spine and rises.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, from what she's describing, that sounds like Kundalini. I've met people who have the electrical interference stuff that don't seem to have any signs of awakened Kundalini. But again, I think this energy manifests in different ways. I think Kundalini is one specific manifestation sometimes.
Yeah.
Or it takes enough of it to manifest to wake up Kundalini in some way. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Is Kundalini? Would you say that orgone is just another word for it?
I think they're connected. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's all like the people are kind of shooting at the same thing and they're not quite getting it right. But Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when I learned about Reich's work on orgone and stuff, I was like, because he's getting people to get more, raise their sexual energy, and he's measuring it in them, and it's like this has got to be connected to Kundalini somehow.
Yeah.
All right, so this story, I have a knowing that this was all connected to my mother's passing and absolutely not coincidence, and hope you will take that into consideration. Here are the events. I had a vivid dream that my mother was in her bedroom sitting at her dressing table. She did this daily in life. A sparkling orb of white light about the size of a small orange circled smoothly and gently around her. In my dream, I knew it was my grandmother's spirit, my mom's mother. My grandmother had died years ago. I awoke feeling that my mom was going to pass away soon, but pushed that thought away, not wanting to believe it. My mom had some heart issues with arrhythmia in 1995 and 96, but no heart attacks or surgeries and was doing well. She was 73 years old at the time that I had this dream in fall of 2003. In early March 2004, some months after the dream, the overhead light in my kitchen started flickering at different times. Just to be clear, the light only flickered when it was on and not constantly, or I would have changed the bulb. The bulb was just a regular incandescent one. It would flicker for approximately 2 to 4 seconds at different intervals whenever I was in the kitchen. It definitely got my attention, but I figured the bulb was just going to burn out soon, but it never did. This lasted for 2 weeks. I started to think something might be wrong with the wiring. I know what you're probably thinking, just climb up there and change the bulb. My only excuse was being a busy single mother with 2 kids in school, working an exhausting waitress job, taking care of us, and the household on my own, so the days flew past and I just figured that the bulb would expire. The night of March 18th, I was about to exit the kitchen, and so I flipped the wall switch to off. The exact moment, and I do mean the exact fraction of a second moment, the light switch hit off, I heard a boom outside, and all the electricity went out, leaving me in the dark and quiet house. It was so uncanny. I was stunned and scared and thinking the electricity in the house was really messed up due to that kitchen light. I saw my next-door neighbor had lights on, but the neighbor on the other side of my house didn't. At that time in my life, I did not know about outside electrical transformers and the loud sound they make when they blow. I went outside and saw that starting from my house down the rest of the street, the electricity was out. That in itself was strange. I'd lived in this house for 10 years when this happened, and I am still here today. Though the electricity in the neighborhood has gone out numerous times through the years, never has it gone out starting or stopping with my house. It was about midnight when all this happened. The next morning, March 19th, my father called me with the sad news of my mother's passing. She had passed very unexpectedly in her sleep in her own bed of heart failure. I'm still unaware of what the time was when she passed, and I was too devastated to care at the time. Now that I'm writing this, I intend to find out. The kitchen light stopped flickering that day and gave off its light smooth and steady for weeks, maybe months, before the bulb had to be replaced. As I've said, I've lived in this house, the same house today, and I've never experienced this since or in any other room. No one changed that light bulb. How strange and symbolic everything was to my mom's passing. And the dream of the sparkling light seems to coincide with the flickering light bulb. I've felt constantly watched over in my life from a very early age. There are so many aspects to so many of my experiences, some of which include UFOs, ghosts, and the electrical thing I think you call Kundalini, years of sleep paralysis, out-of-body experiences, dreams, messengers, and much ESP. I am now in my 60s and feel I have some answers. Thank you for recounting and then discussing many of the things that have happened to you and others. It's nice to have a place to go and know that I am not alone in my search. So that really is part of the goal of talking about this stuff, is so that people know, great. There's probably someone else out there who's had a similar experience to you.
Absolutely.
And this one, none of that shocks me. I mean, we hear all the time of things like the variations on this theme of someone dying and, electrical appliances going, or even the one skeptic there where the clock started ticking.
I think even, the fact that this person is experiencing, Kundalini or, energy, and that if they have, UFO and spirit experiences, and this is just my personal opinion based upon my own personal cosmology, I think that that's all related. I mean, I think it's all, she is tapping into, or she is becoming aware of, what would be called this, the spirit world, the animist world, the world that exists alongside us or intermeshed with us, that not everybody is, aware, conscious of.
Right.
And that's, that's a theme that one can hear in a lot of different, cosmologies and, magical practices, animist practices. But I think that, it doesn't surprise me at all when I hear all of those things are part of, her life.
Yeah, no, me neither. And, occasionally, one of the other comments I'll see regularly is people being like, I don't believe these people that have all these different experiences. And I think in one way or another, these experiences are connected. And I think it's more common for someone to have a bunch of different experiences than just a one-off.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think this is abnormal. I think people haven't talked about it for fear of ridicule. I think they're like, no, people are just going to think I'm crazy because, I saw Bigfoot and I saw UFOs and I saw a ghost in the house. But as we've talked about so many times on the show, these things there's some connection there. They're not necessarily the same thing, but there is a distinct connection.
Right. I think it's so funny when we think about sort of the paranormal ecosystem that we don't, or, I think some people, when they look at the paranormal ecosystem, they don't think of like our ecosystem and like the incredible amount of diversity that exists in our sort of material ecosystem. So if you were to, say, believe in a paranormal of any kind, wouldn't it make sense that there was a similar type of diversity if it was sort of part of, I don't know, just existence, our world,
right.
Or wouldn't be there the chance for that? Yeah,
that is a really good point. I mean, because you see the diversity in animals and plants and stuff like that, but we know they're all connected but different.
Right, exactly. Or we know that there's different, they're connected. There are these different sort of like taxonomies and kingdoms to them, the animal kingdoms and such. We know how they're connected sort of biologically, but they're very different. I mean, how many different things fly in the air, including things that we've created that are machines,
right,
which is adding to that diversity.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it. Anything from you, Adam?
Well, I'll just stress the point that what you're talking about with, people wanting to not be embarrassed about it. Like having that kind of like validation of people knowing that they have that they're having that experience. I'm sure that it can be a pretty scary thing.
Yeah.
For these things to happen. And whenever that, people should know that they're not alone. Absolutely. And I think that, like, your show especially, Seriah, because you've had the experiences yourself, you have really kind of opened the door for people to kind of realize, oh, hey, this is not a truly unusual thing.
And the thing is, there have been numerous times in my life where things happen and I went, am I just going crazy?
Right.
Luckily,
right, exactly.
Luckily,
it's kind of like people that, when you experience something and like the synchronicities, like kind of the Chapel Perilous kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you get to that point, and I've definitely experienced those weird kind of synchronicities, then you wonder, hey man, am I going nuts? Mm-hmm. And then you kind of realize, oh, other people have experienced this. It's not just me. Right. I'm not special in that respect. So it makes you feel more comforted that, hey, you're not going crazy.
It's an integral part about the way reality works. We just don't understand it, and it doesn't fit the materialist paradigm is the problem.
Correct.
Yeah. And there are a lot of, and I say this being somebody who's, born in the West and certainly doesn't have, any sort of heritage coming from different cultures, but the sort of Western materialist paradigm really doesn't allow for anything else, to be present. And that's very different. I have friends in India or in, people I know in Thailand or something like that. And the way that they were raised, and this, this isn't like some difference between, intelligent cultures and, cultures that have, are backward or something. And I don't think anybody listening to this show would think that, but
I'd hope not.
That sort of way of engaging with the world where there is the space for these weird things to happen, that are not weird and people aren't stigmatized for it. And sometimes you can even, if it's incorporated enough into daily life and everybody feels comfortable with it, you can use these to sort of, have a more, I don't know, the word enchanting the world. I'm not particularly fond of that term, but, re-enchanting the world. But I think that, moving away from a strictly materialist paradigm allows for, a greater freedom to sort of, experience the world. So I think that people who have these experiences don't feel like they can talk about them and don't feel like they can express them. It can build up and really cause some really bad psychological states that might make you feel insane if you have these experiences all your life, and you think there's something wrong with you. That could cause somebody to go crazy. I can imagine that happening to me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can just about easily imagine it happening to anybody.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are just about out of time. You guys want to stick around and do a Patreon segment with me? We'll talk about some old Fortiana.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Chris, you can be found where?
brightrectangle.com. Go there. You can look at I'm a filmmaker, so films and stuff like that you can find there.
All right. And Adam, you got, of course, your podcast, but also you got this Strange Realities conference coming up.
Yeah, something like that. We've got Strange Realities conference that is online this year, and somebody named Seriah is going to be a part of that.
Oh,
I don't know. Some guy, he was like begging me to be a part of it, so I was like, okay, I'll let you in. But that's going to be September 25th, 26th, and 27th, and we've got like a really great lineup, including a lot of people that you guys have heard on this show, like Brent Range, Joshua Cutchin, Timothy Renner, David Metcalf, several other people that you've heard of, and they're going to all be presenting through those 3 days on our conference. So check it out at strangerealitiesconference.com.
okay.
I already got my ticket.
That's right. Tickets are only $20, guys, and you really got to see. You're going to have to see Seriah's. You're going to have to see Seriah's presentation. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be the biggest presentation you've ever seen. Probably the best of that weekend.
It's on Flies.
So, it's on Flies. Yes.
Yes, that's what I'll do it on. Flies.
Some flies may appear. You never know. Like
it'll be like Yuri.
He's going to do the Karate Kid chopstick trick.
No. It'll be like
flies.
It'll be like Uri Geller bending spoons in people's houses while they watch. I'll cause flies to appear in everyone's houses. Wow, that would be a trick.
Yes. So guys, Aaron Gullius is going to be there. Several Red Pill Junkie is going to be a part of it.
Yep.
Greg Bishop is going to be a part of it. Jenny Ashford has been on your show. Yep. And we've got several other people that have not been on Where Did the Road Go, but have been on Conspiranormal. Ren Collier, of course, has been on both of our shows. So you guys really need to come check it out. We're going to be covering everything from like folk magic to conspiracy theory to UFOs to demons and UFOs to synchronicities to even gas station grimoires. So you guys need to come check that out, and you can get tickets at strangerealitiesconference.com.
Now, if someone gets the tickets to this, will the and doesn't want to sit through the whole weekend, maybe has to work or whatever.
Right.
Will they be able to access those after the fact?
Yes, they can, because what we are doing it over is a private Facebook group.
Okay.
Okay. And you got to get a ticket for Seriah to let you in there.
Okay.
And like we said, tickets are $20, but because we're streaming it to that private Facebook group, all of those are going to be uploaded to Facebook. So whenever we end a session, you guys can go back and you can watch it. Nice. And I've had that question a lot because I've had a couple of people have asked me that have been from Australia, and of course the time zones are so much different and so much opposite that they're afraid that they couldn't, be up at 3 a.m. or something their time. So yeah, to answer the question, the answer is yes, they will be able to see those.
All right. Thank you guys for joining me on this show. It's been interesting.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to take a moment here to thank all of my patrons. You guys keep this show going, and I especially want to give a shout out to those pledging $10 or more. Tim, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Carla Mahoney, Mark Brady, William Lovelace, Patricia Giaquinta, James Lattimore, Matthew Sproul, Alfred Tuttle, Ray Benedetto, Lindsey Jackson K, Craig Cicernos, Roger Gonzalez, Jose A., Kevin Schreck, J. Otto Bullitt, Riker and Stark, Christopher Vaughn, Sasha Jorg, Dominic O'Malley, Eric Citron, Andy McNamara, John Rutledge Foster III, American Rambler, Kevin, Jennifer Campbell, Taylor, 36 Dingo, Janet Bunderson, Tactical Therapist, Alex Whitcomb, Edu Camahort, Rob Drummond, Luke Osborne, Stone Wilderness, Sam Sharon, Vincent Trewell, The Great Change, David Moore, Craig Parmiter, Chris Barr, Walker, Joanna Rojas, Maddie, Patricia W., Barbara Fisher, Will Powell, Big Boy Limina, and Nagatha Christie. Thank you all so very much.
Join us September 25th, 26th, and 27th for a 3-day special streaming event, Strange Realities, to push the limits of your reality. Featuring authors, academics, researchers, occultists, experiencers, podcasters, and practitioners. All presenting fresh cutting-edge material and research. Streaming live. Featuring presentations by
Brent Rains, editor of Alternate Perceptions magazine. Aaron Gullius, host of the Saucer Life podcast. David Metcalf, writer and researcher. Alan Greenfield, author of Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts. Stephanie Quick, writer and blogger. Red Pill Junkie, 14 researcher and explorer. Tim Banal, host of Banal of America. Guy Malone, iconoclast and troublemaker. Timothy Ritter, host of Strange Familiars. Kiki Dombrowski, author and practitioner. Greg Bishop, author of Project Beta. Jenny Ashford, host of 13 O'Clock. Recluse, host of The Farm. Jack Montgomery, Folk Magic. Joshua Cutchin, author of Thieves in the Night. Reverend Michael Carter, Alien Contact Experiencer. Dr. Future, host of Future Quake. Tony Kale, author of Memphis Hoodoo. Rin Collier, occultist. Seriah Askath, host of Where Did the Road Go? And John Tinney, Ghost Stalkers in Hell.
all 3 days, only $20. Tickets and info available at strangerealitiesconference.com. Brought to you by the Conspiranormal Podcast. Conspiranormal.com. Strange Realities.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that listeners' stories edition of Where Did the Road Go? If you have a story you'd like to share, contact me at stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com. And at some point in the future, we will read your story on the air. And if you have a bunch of stuff you want to talk about, we can always arrange for you to come on personally if you'd like to do that as well. Although I am a little bit behind in setting those up. I tend to be bad at following up on those sometimes because I'm a little overwhelmed. But anyway, stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com. There is an extra segment for Patreons from this conversation where we delve into some old Fortiana, some old newspaper clippings from the 1800s and early 1900s with some really weird stuff in them. I probably don't say this enough. Remember, you can get merch, t-shirts, and all kinds of other stuff at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Just click on the merch link. Become a patron if you want extra content. And it's only $3 a month. And you'll get numerous extra things a month, including sometimes very long shows that just spontaneously happen, like what Tim and I did last time. All right. So that's it for this week. See you next time.
You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.